Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020, you are listening to the Inquisitive Bro podcast. On today's episode, first round is almost over. Raptors brick their way to a 2-0 series deficit. Nuggets come back from the dead, and it only took 10,000 points from Jamal Murray to do it. Lots going on. Playoffs are heating up. I'm Andrew. He's Chris. Let's go.
Okay, Andrew, so like you said in that intro, the first round is almost done. We only have OKC and Houston Game 7 to deal with, which we'll get in later. But why don't we just start with the disappointing Raptors, who are down 2-0 to the Celtics. What have your thoughts been so far from this series?
I'm just doing a quick Google search for Pascal, how to play basketball. Okay, good. I'm going to send this over.
Yeah, it seems like he's forgotten, at least to play at an all-star level. This was a potential concern if you're a Raptors fan going into the series. The Celtics are really good, much better than the Nets. And one of the ways that you could perceive the Raptors winning this series is if Pascal plays at least to an all-star level, hopefully matching Jason Tatum, but definitely not losing that battle substantially. And, well, Jason Tatum has taken a leap. He is looking far and away the best player in this series. It's not even close. And Pascal is not only being outplayed by Jason, he's being outplayed by the guy who's guarding him, which is Marcus Smart.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking completely out of sorts out there. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I have some theories about what's going on, as opposed to last year where he could play off of Kawhi, and Kawhi was the main focal point on offense for the Raptors, and people really had to defend him. Now they're defending Siakam, and he's the guy, and we're dumping it to him in the post, making him go ISO. We're giving it to him up top, making him go ISO. That is not his game. He is a play in the flow of the game kind of guy. He's not a give it to him, clear out, and that's what we've been asking him to do. I'm a little surprised that's the route we went with because we didn't see a ton of it during the regular season. Again, the Raptors' defense generally is what leads to their offense. We're a good team in transition, but in the playoffs, as you know, things slow down. Half court plays a bigger role, and we're just not ready for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Pascal is learning, and this happens with all young stars, that in the playoffs, when you're the primary scorer, it's a different level of attention and intensity. You're going to get their best shot. They're putting their best defender on you, Marcus Smart, who's causing you a ton of issues. We're trying to post him up because of the size mismatch, but unfortunately, this is not something that's been working in our favor. I completely agree with you that he's not good in the isolation scenarios. He's looking rushed. It's like he's playing too passive when he doesn't have the ball, not demanding attention. He doesn't seem to be a threat in the first two games I've seen. And then when he does have the ball, he's being too frantic with it. It's like the game is going too fast for him right now, and he needs to slow it down.
Yeah, it seems like we're basically just running the same offense this year that we ran last year, except the difference is that they've swapped Siakam in the spot where Kawhi was, and you just can't do that. They're not the same player. I mean, Siakam is looking uncomfortable in basically every situation you give him.
Yeah, exactly. This was the concern. Like I said, this was the concern for Raptors fans in a playoff series when you face a really good opponent, and that is that you no longer have that half-court offense, one-on-one threat like Kawhi, who, when everything gets jumbled up, he can still get a bucket or at least a good shot no matter what. We don't have that.
I mean, he's very limited offensively. His footwork isn't great. His handle isn't great. And for his height, he's I would say he's subpar passing out of the double team.
He is struggling passing out of the double team because they're sending late help on him a lot, especially in those post touches, and he's not been able to find the open man so far. But we'll see how the adjustments go. But so far, that has been a complete L for the Raps in terms of matchups.
Let's talk game one. What happened? We'll summarize that quickly, and we'll get into what we saw in game two. You want to do that?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. I mean, game one, we just didn't come ready to play.
Yeah, I mean, complete rout of the Raptors. I wanted to attribute a little bit to the time off, what went on. We know that there were some games boycotted. The Raptors' first game was pushed.
Celtics had the same amount of time off, though.
Yeah, it's just one team was ready for it, one team wasn't, maybe. There was just no reason for us to come out of the gate as slow as we did. Game one, there was a couple times we had some runs to kind of bring it to a 10-point game. Nothing really materialized. Start to finish, Celtics led. Yeah, it was a blowout.
That's interesting that you talk about the runs because I found that there was a parallel there with game 2 where, I mean, we came out a lot better and a lot more determined as was expected. But other than that run near the end of the third quarter where we went up, I think, 11 at one point or 8.
In game 2.
Yeah, in game 2. I'm talking about game 2. You would see these situations where we still couldn't sustain stops and scores consistently to keep up runs. And that goes down again to the fact that this team struggles in the half court on offense. This is not new. This is something that happened throughout the year. There's a reason why the Raptors were pretty pedestrian. I think like 15th in the league in offensive rating overall. We're number 1 in the league in offensive rating in transition. We are an amazing transition team. And that does make sense because Pascal's great in transition. Norm Powell excels in transition. We have the 2 ball handlers in Kyle and Fred who make tremendous decisions for the most part in transition. But Boston is the number 1 transition defense. They get back all the time, and they're really limiting our scoring abilities on the rush there, and they're forcing us to execute in the half court, and we haven't been able to do it to the level that we need to win games, to win this series.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes your team plays well in the regular season, then you get to the playoffs, and things aren't really panning out, and you're trying to figure out why. That's not really the case here. Like, it's very clear what's happening. Regular season, you're getting different matchups. Teams aren't really game playing for you as much faster pace, higher number of possessions. Raps can play the game they want to play. Boston's doing a great job in transition getting back. So the few opportunities we do have to leak out, they're stopping us. I mean, game 1, we just shot the ball so poorly. So Pascal, 5 of 16. Fred, 3 of 16. Powell, 4 of 12. Ibaka, 4 of 10. Lowry went 1 of 5 from distance. He would continue to struggle from 3 in game 2. Raptors shot 37% of the floor. They bricked 30 out of 43s. We went 10 of 40 in game 1 from 3.
I know. I'm just looking at that. We actually went 11 of 40, to be exact.
And Celtics made everything. They could have had a blindfold on shooting threes in the corner.
Well, they made 15 of 38, so that's 39.5%, almost 40, obviously, and we shot, what did we shoot? We shot 27.5%. That's another thing. Look, the Raptors aren't going to win the series if literally every good player on the Celtics is playing well. I mean, in the first 2 games, you went through stretches where Jason Tatum obviously eviscerated us in game 2, but he was really good in game 1 as well. Marcus Smart went absolutely off in the fourth quarter in game 2. That just happens sometimes. I mean, that happened for us with Van Vliet last year. That's just the way playoff games work, but you can't have everyone going off. Kemba Walker had a good game down the stretch there. Jaylen Brown, right at the start of the game, was going off. We need someone to get off their game. We need to take someone out of that game. We can't have all their threats working while we're not making shots. We also can't lose the 3-point battle.
Okay, but here's a problem with that. My notes here for game 2 was that I thought it was a really big missed opportunity for the Raptors to take that game, and here's why. I don't think the Celtics played that well through the first 3 quarters.
They didn't.
They shot the ball poorly. Their transition D was a little bit better, but their defense as a whole wasn't good. We were able to hit some shots, get on some runs. I mean, Kemba obviously got laid hot. Smart got really hot from 3 late, 5 of 6 from the line in the fourth alone. Raptors went cold in the fourth. But like that game was right there for the taking. We just couldn't execute down the stretch.
I completely agree, yeah. That was a classic game where the other team wasn't playing as well, and we had a shot. And
Pascal didn't make a field goal in the fourth quarter, played 12 minutes.
Yeah, well, I mean, we blew that game.
You see Kemba's, that step back at the end,
patented,
is classic UConn Kemba.
Ibaka played great defense on that possession too, because they had the high screen and they switched it, and he played great defense. You can't keep up with that step back. Very few people in the league can.
Another great highlight, Tatum's crossover of Siakam.
When was that?
I don't know. He was going 1-on-1. He went right, pulled it back left, and Siakam kind of did a split, fell down.
Oh, yeah, he slipped. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the main highlight, one of the main highlights from this game is just Marcus Smart's complete flop job on that transition. I mean, that was kind of clever. I mean, I don't know how the ref didn't see that. The reffing has been kind of suspect, in my opinion, for the first 2 games. It doesn't change the fact that they've been the better team, but I'm just saying, like, I think we haven't had the Raptors, that is. I don't think we've had the most favorable whistle. Hopefully that turns.
No, we haven't. I mean, first game, we got absolutely hosed by the refs in the first quarter. I don't know what was going on there. But then, you know, I was starting to think, like, when you come out of the gate and you show the hustle and you're the team that really gets after it, you tend to get the calls.
Yeah, the Celtics came in and they were much more determined. although I was frustrated with the way the whistle was going in game one, we were still losing that game anyway. We just played like crap.
Yeah.
So we're already down 2-0. Nothing you can change about that. Andrew, what are some adjustments that you'd like to see Nick Nurse do maybe going forward to try to like turn this around?
Okay, so I think that Nick Nurse is in the same position that Budenholzer is with Milwaukee, in that the pressure is going to be on them to come out with something different, whether it's a different gameplay, different lineup change, try different combinations. You got to shake it up. And I think I texted you 4 or 5 minutes into the fourth quarter of that Raptors game, and I'm like, Gasol's a liability.
Yeah, we are losing the center battle in this series. I mean, give the Celtics credit for all the stars and great players they have at the wings and guard spots, but they went cheap this season on centers. They have Daniel Tice, who's been playing great, like credit to him, and then they have a rotation of Enes Kanter and Robert Williams, and they're not even playing Enes Kanter. But the point is, if we want to win the series, you can't lose that matchup. You can't have Gasol and Ibaka, two big names, losing against Daniel Tice and Robert Williams, but we are.
But see, I don't think Ibaka is. Like, you looked at Ibaka's play. Yeah, he's been good over 2 games. And the problem with Mark is that we're playing a drive and kick game to where you're hoping that that kick goes to anybody who can make that shot. They're giving him 10, 11, 12 feet, and he's not even coming close. Like, they're going right for the rebound.
Marc Gasol's reticence to shoot on offense is a problem. And also the fact that when he does, he's missing too often. He's not making them respect his outside shot, and frankly, I wouldn't if I were them.
Yeah, me neither.
Mark, shoot away, but I do agree. You can't have a nothing on offense right now against this team. We have to have 5 threats on the floor, which gets to my point, which I told you before we started taping this, that I think the answer is you got to go small. The Celtics are starting small as well, where they don't have a traditional 4. They have Tice, and then they have Tatum, Brown, Kemba, and Smart, with Smart guarding Pascal for the most part, and then Jaylen Brown takes some turns as well. I think it's time to go small. I think you have to go line up like maybe not as a starting rotation, because Gasol still does pretty good at the rim defense, so I'll give him that. But I think even though he hasn't played great in this series, I think it's time to play Norm more. I think you have to do something where it's like Kyle, Fred, Norm, OG, Siakam. Just spread them out. Just almost do kind of like a Rockets situation where you're driving and kicking. No more zeros on offense. Maybe that frees up Pascal for drives to the net, more open threes. I really liked what I've seen from OG, but I think it's time to go into the blender and change things up, because what we're doing right now is not working, and we can't just keep throwing out the same stuff every time.
Yeah, no, you're right. So there's 2 options. One, they stick with what we got, and we just hope Gasol turns it around in the flow of the offense and hope that works out. I do not think that's what they should go with, nor do I think it is. I mean, Nick Nurse is one of the best coaches at changing it up and throwing something out there that the opposition hasn't seen before, so I think I'm pretty confident in what he's going to be able to come up with for Game 3. But yeah, I mean, also go smaller, give Norm a shot to kind of get the Raptors offense back into a transition game, which they tend to struggle in the half court, so the transition game is what we're going to look for. I think you can do that with a smaller guy in Norm. And at the same time, man, we just got to shoot better.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Like I said, we can't lose the 3-point battle. We need better 3-point variance.
But it's uncharacteristically. I mean, Lowry 0 of 7 from 3 last night. Fred went 8 of 22 from the floor.
Lowry for the series, for those listening, if you just look at the stats, is shooting 8.3% from 3.
But
that's going to tick up.
That sounds bad, but is that really surprising? Like, we've known Lowry to have terrible shooting playoff stretches. This is no different.
I still think he's been overall like very effective, just not shooting well. You'd like those to go down. It's not on one guy. I mean, there's some main culprits, but it's a whole team thing. We just need to play better. It's that simple. And I also think we need to make some lineup changes to allow us to play better.
It's frustrating. I don't know what to say. It's a weird 2-0 because the first game was a wash. It happens. Second game, I feel like we could have had it, but like I can't really pinpoint to any one specific thing because there were so many areas that we lacked in.
That's one of the ones where it's a lot of small things in the margins throughout the game that just add up to us losing. I mean, frankly, we probably win that game if it wasn't for the fact that Marcus Smart got touched by the hand of God and like went off. I mean, he shot like 34% from 3 during the season, and he'd been shooting 29% from 3 over the course of the playoffs. And then out of nowhere, it just goes 5 for 5, including a 4-point play. I mean, whatever, that happens though in a small sample size. Like,
I mean, all you needed was one of two things. You needed either Marcus Smart not to go Ray Allen from 3, or you needed any Raptor to make a couple extra field goals.
Yeah, I know. But it didn't happen. But projecting forward, this kind of reminds me a little bit of the Milwaukee series. Obviously, the games are flipped around, whereas in Milwaukee, we blew game one.
And you're talking about the Raptor-Milwaukee
Yeah.
conference finals from last year.
Yeah. Whereas game one, we blew a winnable game, and then game two, we got absolutely, just curb stomped. It's kind of the opposite. This is a competitive team. I would be shocked if they just suddenly lie down and got beat just summarily. But, we got to make some changes, and we got to come out harder. I think we can battle back because we're not going back to Boston. Side note, this is actually a series where I think, obviously you can't change anything now, but this is a series where I think we really missed having home court advantage.
Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, you make a good point. If we were down 2-0 at this point, we'd be going back to Boston, and the series would probably be over.
Oh, yeah, that would be in trouble. Now
blessing and a curse.
Yeah, now we've just lost 2 games. We can win 2 games. We can still beat these guys, but it's going to need greater efforts from everyone. So
I don't think the Raptors have played 2 worst games back-to-back all season.
Probably not.
This is really, really poor. And I know Boston's a terrible matchup for us.
It is. That's another thing where it's a matchup game, and Boston matches up really well with us. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the pod so far. Please remember to rate and subscribe and tell your friends about it. We at the Inquisitive Bro would really appreciate it. New pods coming every week. We got hockey playoffs still going, basketball obviously, and the NFL season is starting. What's going to happen with that? Pods coming up, so look out for that at the Inquisitive Bro. Anyway, back to the pod. Okay, moving on. So speaking of good matchups for a team, let's go to the Bucks versus Heat, where, Andrew, the Heat look like the ideal matchup to face the Bucks. For the Heat, that is. Yeah,
no, they looked really good. So going back one series, Bucks finally took care of business and disposed of Orlando. I'm not going to talk about the Magic, their outlook, or what they're happening next season, because they have no outlook. They're terrible. They will be terrible for many years.
They're not terrible. They project to be a 7th or 8th seed for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that sweet spot where you always bounce in the first round, usually win game 1, classic Magic, and then you never get a high enough draft pick to do any damage the next season. That sucks. But anyway, yeah, so Magic gone. We're not going to talk about them. Heat Bucks going to be a great series. Heat stole a page from the 2019 Toronto Raptors playbook when defending the Bucks. They played that game the same way we did when we finally figured out how to stop Giannis. I thought they executed it to perfection, led to a game 1 win.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, every team that plays the Bucks going forward is going to play that way if the Bucks make it past the Heat,
But it's odd that they don't do it in the regular season.
Well,
Bucks perennially win 60 games in the regular season, but then come the playoffs, it's almost like you game plan for it a little bit more.
You can't say perennially when it's only been 2 seasons, but...
What's the definition of perennial? Is it more than 2? Is it 3?
I would say it's more than 2. I think it has to be a little bit more than a longer sample size than just, say, 2 years in a row they've done this.
Well, put it this way. I think they're probably going to win 60 games, or at least flirt with it next season as well. So then I will come back. Then I can drop the perennial.
Yeah, then you drop that the P-bomb.
Yeah. I'm going to set a reminder on my phone for this time next year.
Look, in our last pod where we had our brackets, I picked the Heat to win this series. I think they match up exceptionally well against the Bucks. And the other thing about the Bucks is, they do the same shit over and over and over again. You know exactly what they're going to do. It's a really good system because they have really good players. But if you have the right pieces to match their drop back system, they're always going to drop back their centers. They're always going to leave above the break threes. They lit the most above the break threes of the entire NBA this year. So if you have the type of personnel that can exploit that, aka a Duncan Robinson, a Goran Dragic, and a Tyler Hero, then that's really good on offense. And then on defense, they have amazing defensive players all throughout. They're gritty, they're strong. Bam Adebayo is a great first guy to take Giannis. Then you got Jimmy Buckets, who's just locking down Middleton when it matters most. You told me about this during the game. Classic Middleton starts out hot because he's a tremendously talented player, but he scored in the first half. He scored, I think it was 21 points. Here, let me just bring it up.
Chris Middleton is the NBA's resident Houdini because of the disappearing acts he does time and time again in the playoffs late in the games.
Yeah, so he had 21 points in the first half. Very spunky. He was 9 for 14. And in the second half, he was 3 for 10 for 7 points and also -9. I mean, you don't just put it all on Chris Middleton because he's not their best player, and there's other guys who struggled, including Giannis, who was held to basically half his scoring average. But it is a consistent theme, and this is a issue for Milwaukee that they're going to have to address, and it's the fact that Chris Middleton doesn't appear to be mentally the guy who asserts himself that you might need in the playoffs, especially if he's your number 2 on a championship caliber team or a team with championship aspirations. He floats in and out of games, and near the end of games, he doesn't appear to be the type of guy who really wants the ball.
Last year when Milwaukee got eliminated and then they lost Brogdon in the offseason, everybody went, this is going to be a big move. And now we are seeing that play out. They really need a Brogdon in these situations, especially late in games where we've seen he had a great series, even though they lost, but
Yeah.
he played well, and that's exactly what they're missing, where Middleton isn't stepping up when they need Brogdon to.
That is a very, very poignant point. It is painfully obvious, especially when they were missing Eric Bledsoe for game 1, that the Bucks need another guy who can be a playmaker ball handler in the half court when it gets down the stretch. Someone who has some poise. Malcolm Brogdon was perfect for that. And they got rid of him for money purposes. And now they're missing that player, and they could really use it. And now if they don't make the finals, if they don't win the championship this year, they have one more year of Giannis under contract with 2 draft picks that they got for Brogdon, burning a hole in their pocket. It would be foolish for them to keep those and not try to capitalize that for a more immediate asset when you literally have the best player in the league right now. But that's a discussion for a different story. The point is, right now, the Bucks are in trouble. I think Budenholzer is going to have to maybe consider making some adjustments, which
He does not have those adjustments.
He doesn't. He hates to do it. Even he has a system that just seems to work amazing in the regular season.
But what is the system? Giannis goes 40, 10, and 10 every game.
I'm talking about also if you look at the Atlanta Hawks as well, which suffered a similar fate to current day Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, what Budenholzer does is he likes to have a lot of guys who all can contribute, and he has this drop back system where he's always dropping back the centers. I mean, in Atlanta, that was Al Horford. Now it's Brook Lopez and Giannis. He stays steadfast to his rotations. He's taking Giannis out at really random times, which he would do in the regular season. But in the playoffs, you got to play to the game. I mean, I get that they traded for Marvin Williams at the trade deadline, but he should be more a bit player, contingency plans. If the game calls for it, maybe put him in. You shouldn't feel the need to take out Giannis to make sure that Marvin Williams gets his. But that's what Bud does. He likes to play 10 guys, and he still sticks to his 10 guys, even in tight playoff games. Is Giannis going to play over 40 minutes in this series? Watch out for that, because I honestly don't know if Bud is mentally willing to play his guys more minutes than he's already pre-allotted, despite what's happening in the game.
Maybe they let him try it for one more game, but if they go down 2-0 and he hasn't changed anything for game 2 and they lose again, he's going to get a knock on his door, and they're going to ask him to switch it up.
And then he'll probably be like, I'm the coach, I have say over this.
Maybe, but if they lose a series, does he still have a job come next season?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, he's still one of the best coaches in the league, but maybe he's just got to start seeing, maybe it's time to switch it up. You know what he actually reminds me of a little bit? To use a hockey analogy, Mike Babcock.
Right. Yeah.
Just good coach. I mean, we'll leave aside Mike's hard-assness that I don't think Bud has, but good coach, but just stubborn to a fault.
People hated Babcock, though.
Oh, they hated him.
Yeah.
They seem to like Bud, but I'm just saying,
However, though, you don't think Giannis is asking... I mean, I know he said in the postgame, whatever coach says I'm going to do, but you don't think he's being like, bro, I'm Giannis Antetokounmpo, get me some minutes. Damian Lillard's playing 45 minutes a game. Jamal Murray's playing a bunch of minutes. If LeBron in a big game, he'll play the minutes. They're not holding LeBron back so JR can get his shots.
I don't know if he is, but he should be. I mean,
Yeah,
he's not a rock the boat type of guy, you can tell, but he should be like that. I mean, he's 26 now. LeBron, when he was 26 with the Heat, he was playing 42 minutes a game.
Yeah, and in the playoffs, like 47 and a half minutes a game.
No, I'm talking about in the playoffs. I mean, you play like 38 in the regular season. He would play like 42 minutes a game average, and then in games where you kind of needed it, then he could play the full game. He would play the full game sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, Spoelstra would take him out like 30 seconds before a TV timeout to try and get him an extended time. So you look at his end of game minutes, and it was like 46 and a half, and you're like, okay, so it was basically the whole game.
Giannis is a freak athlete. I mean, this is why it's great to have an MVP, because he's on the floor, and he's a complete game changer, and I don't know. We'll see. Like, it was just game 1. We'll see what he does tonight. Game 2. See how the game goes. I mean, if they're winning, then don't change your substitution patterns. This is going to be a long series. And when it comes down to like a game 6, game 7, must-win moments, is Bud going to stick to his rotation patterns?
Milwaukee is suffering the same or a similar fate as the Raptors are. Giannis is not a shooter. Likes to get out in transition. Likes to run the floor. Plays on the floor of the game. High possession for him. He shot 4 of 12 from the line in game 1, 6 of 12 from the floor.
Right. His free throw shooting is a problem. That was one thing in the Milwaukee series against the Raptors that was exceptionally helpful for us. I mean, if you just compared our two superstars, Kawhi seemed to make every single free throw he got, and Giannis was always going 1 for 2, 1 for 2, 0 of 2. Those are big momentum killers. When you have free throws in the playoffs and tight games, you got to make them. It can really swing games.
There's a big difference being a 40% free throw shooter when you're going 1 of 2, and it's another thing when you're getting to the line 12, 13, 14 times a game.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also a confidence thing, because when you start missing the free throws, suddenly you're not playing aggressive because you don't want to get fouled, and it snowballs.
Bucks were second in the NBA in fast break points in the regular season.
They were, and Miami was just like the Toronto-Boston series, Miami was among the league leaders in transition defense. I mean, for the superstar of his magnitude, Giannis, who's amazing, he can also be defended, like you said. He has holes in his game, despite his just obvious strengths. But there's weaknesses that you can still take advantage of.
This is why the eye test is so important in basketball, because when it's all said and done, Giannis's stats and his numbers are going to be epic. Like, they're going to be massive across the board. But when you look at the eye test, you look at him compared to a Kobe, a Paul Pierce, a Kawhi Leonard. But then when you look at the eye test and you're looking at, like, okay, who do I want in certain situations when in big games? Giannis offensively, a little bit like Siakam, is limited. He does 1 or 2 things incredibly well, maybe better than almost anybody who's ever played basketball. But if you're able to limit those 1 or 2 things, you can easily exploit Milwaukee's offense.
Well, it's easier to defend someone when you know what they're going to do, right? There's one reason why you mentioned those guys, those wings, who can do, like, they're 3-level scorers. Jason Tatum's like this as well.
Yeah.
Got the mid-range. He's got the pull-up jumper, and he's got the 3. He can drive to the rim. He's got everything. You don't know what he's going to do. Giannis, no matter what, I'm going to give him 10 feet of space. Like, go ahead. Shoot a 3 if you want to. You're not going to. You're going to try to drive in.
Right.
Create the wall. See what happens.
Yeah.
And despite that, Giannis is the type of talent that can still overcome that. But they're going to need more from their other players. Like, when Middleton has 21 points in the first half, he can't then go and have 9 points or 7 points in the second half, which overall looks like a good game, but in reality, he actually shrunk in the moment. If you have 21 points in the first half, go get 35. You're good enough to do it. You need to do it. You know who did it? Jimmy Butler.
Right. Again, that's why the eye test is so important. 40 points for the Bucks in the first quarter, 18 in the fourth quarter. Shout out to Eric Spoelstra, again, one of the best coaches in the league. I've said it for years. Making adjustments.
So switching over to the Western Conference now, we have one Game 7 tonight, which is OKC versus Houston. But first, let's talk about the Game 7 that happened last night. Denver versus Utah. The end of what was an epic series, and specifically an epic duel between Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, like all-time great playoff duels.
Actually, I have a fun stat for you, Andrew.
All right, let's hear it.
So Donovan Mitchell, who averaged 36.3 points per game in this series, he scored 254 total points in the series. That is the third most ever in a playoff series loss. The only other people who have scored more points in a playoff series loss, Jerry West in 1969 and Bob McAdoo in 1975.
Okay, so a couple of things with that stat. One, to achieve that stat and lose, the series basically has to go 6 or 7 games. Probably 7.
Probably 7,
You could average 40 a game, get swept, you're not getting that stat.
Exactly.
But even then, it makes me think of like some LeBron series losses that went deep.
Yeah.
Some Jordan ones early against the Celtics where he was dropping like mad points per game. That's interesting. Interesting stat.
I mean,
Surprising.
we're not putting Donovan on that level of player overall, but he did literally have two 50-point games, and he went off. He averaged 36.3 points per game during a series.
Yeah.
That's going to get you a lot of points.
4 50-point games in this series.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
2 Mitchell, 2 Murray, nuts.
Yeah, plus an extra 40-point game by Mitchell just kind of mixed in there.
Icing on the cake. They went off. Crazy series,
Yeah.
man. Crazy series.
It was ridiculous. And it's kind of funny to juxtapose the first 6 games versus the game 7 itself, which was just a slugfest. Talk about, like, despite the fact that in this bubble it seems like everyone is shooting pretty well,
Yeah.
it seems game 7 is still going to be game 7. It's going to be gritty, tough. Guys are nervous and they're tight at the start. None of them got the stats that like they typically got.
But see, that's my kind of game.
Everyone shot poorly.
I love those kind of games.
Yeah.
Final score in this game 7 was 80-78.
Yeah, and it was still really exciting. And it came down to the wire. And can we talk about how Denver literally almost blew it with where they steal it with 8 seconds left. All they have to do is just hold the ball, but instead they go for a fast break layup. They miss, and then Mike Conley has like a pretty decent shot, given the circumstances, to win the series right there. It rimmed out.
Yeah, who did take that layup for the Jazz?
I think it was, you mean for the Denver Nuggets?
Sorry, for the Nuggets, correct, for the Nuggets.
Don't actually remember.
Because like I'm just questioning whether he knew exactly what the time and score was at that point.
Was it Torrey Craig? It might have been Torrey Craig.
Torrey Craig pulled out a J.R. Smith basketball play there. That could have been bad. Imagine you got stripped at half.
Murray was the one that passed it. Like, I mean, when you're already there, might as well go for the layup. It was an open layup. He bricked it. I mean, how did he miss that? But
was it open though?
It was pretty open.
I don't know.
It was pretty open.
You got to hold that. You got to hit some free throws.
Yeah, well, exactly. It reminds me a little bit of when Andrea Bargnani, shout out to a former Raptor, I think he was with the Knicks at this time. They had an OT game, and they get an offensive rebound. So there, they basically sealed the game. They pass it out to Andrea at the top of the key. He should hold it, and instead, he just right away chucks it up, misses, and the announcer's like, "What is he doing?"
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad enough to have to be affiliated with the Knicks organization, but then you start doing stuff like that, it's a tough pill to swallow. I wish I knew what was going through Andrea's head when he took that shot.
I get points.
I feel like if you looked at his mouth, he was just going, Kobe, and bricked it off the back.
Primo pasta and sauce.
Primo pasta and sauce.
No, I mean, good thing for Denver's point of view that Conley's shot didn't go in, although that would have been epic, because then you're talking about an all-time brain fart that would go down in history.
Oh, yeah.
But kind of like when Danny Green almost cost us Game 6 of the championship. When he threw the ball away.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about that because...
I talk about it. He needs to remember that.
I'm sure he does. The collective we don't really talk about it because we ended up winning.
Conley struggled this game, 2 of 13.
He did. But, I mean, that's Game 7.
Utah really missed Bogdanovich.
They did. They really missed Bogdanovich. I mean, he's arguably their third best player.
Should we be holding somebody accountable, though, for the fact that they blew a 3-1 lead? 12th team in NBA history to do that.
I think there's going to be more of that stuff in the bubble. I mean, they're not going back and forth between their home games, right?
Yeah, I guess.
These were two evenly matched teams, really, like throughout.
A lot of similarities between the two.
Yeah, and just so happened that, like, I don't know, I'm not going to hold too much against them. They were also the lower seed, missing a really good player in Bogdanovich. Like, frankly, Denver had played poorly to get to the point where they were down 3-1, but good for them for winning.
You like that skyhook Jokic hit on Gobert with 30 seconds left?
Yeah.
That was a wide skyhook.
Create separation from the big shot blocker.
He knew he had to get over that big hand, man. That had a big arc. My new nickname is Nikola Abdul-Jabbar. I wonder if that's going to stick.
It's got a ring to it.
Yeah, it just kind of flows.
And now Utah's out. Not much they can do in the offseason. They just announced that they're going to sign Donovan Mitchell to a max extension off his rookie contract. That's kind of a no-brainer. Okay, now let's switch. Let's kind of switch tracks here and talk about the upcoming OKC and Houston game really quickly. What are you looking out for Game 7?
Man, if I'm Houston, I am so nervous. So nervous. If I'm OKC, I'm playing with house money. Nobody expected me to even be here at this point. So pressure's off, you know? But if I'm James Harden or Westbrook or like that organization, D'Antoni, man, I'm sweating.
I think it's like this is the type of situation where it really comes down to like, okay, everyone like drop their drawers, just put your balls up on the table and see who's his biggest.
I mean,
Like,
this is it. You got to figure it out this year.
Yeah. Did you see that? Did you see that picture where James Harden was next to Chris Paul? They were on the blocks when someone was shooting a free throw, and Chris Paul
Yeah.
was just staring to James
I
Harden's
saw a
soul.
meme that said, "This is what it looks like when Chris Paul steals your soul."
Yeah, he's just staring at James.
He was at a 90-degree angle.
Look, all the pressure's on Houston. Just straight up. Their two best players are guys who have clear playoff demons and playoff failures in the past. They're still tremendous players, but James Harden, he has shot his teams out of series and big games before.
That hasn't happened yet, though.
Hasn't happened yet. You're right. And he actually played a pretty good game 6. But I'm saying, can he pull through or does that happen again? Russell Westbrook. If you're going to put blame, he had terrible turnovers, like egregious turnovers in game 6 that were just wasted possessions. And when you lose by such a small amount, those wasted possessions mattered. And especially at the end of the game where you had that air ball and then another terrible turnover, that was bad down the stretch. Russell Westbrook has had issues like that before in the past. Bricking threes, making poor decisions, poor turnovers. Is that going to rear its ugly head again?
It might, but I have a weird feeling that even if Russ has a bad game 7, I don't think the critics are going to be hating on Russ. We've done that for so many years.
No.
I think they're going to point the finger at James Harden. Hard.
I think it depends how the games go. I really do believe that it depends how the game goes. They need to win this game, though. Everything that Houston has built up towards resides on the outcome of this game, and then if they make it further, on the outcome of further games. Because they need to make it far. I mean, it's not even a second round exit to the Lakers that would be acceptable. I mean, there is going to be wholesale changes coming to this organization, and potentially regardless. Daryl Morey is not on solid ground with his owner, especially costing him millions and millions of dollars because of his China tweet.
Yeah. Every owner has cost the league.
But specifically Houston, because of their Yao connection, they were played a ton in China. They made bank there, and now they don't. And then you have Mike D'Antoni, who's kind of a lame duck coach. He doesn't have a contract for next year, and there's a lot of speculation that he's going to leave, maybe regardless. I don't think his relationship with the ownership there is as good as it was. He's kind of run his course, but I mean,
even though he's done exactly what they asked him to do,
he hasn't won a chip.
No, but okay. So the result hasn't been the same, but they've asked him to execute a certain game plan, which was similar to kind of a 7-second Phoenix Sun offense. And he did that. That's what they did. The offense has been good. It just hasn't panned out. But
it's 7 seconds on steroids. That's what it is.
Yeah, I know. But he's done what they've asked him to do. It's just the result didn't work. I don't know if that's on him.
But it just distills all to this. This entire team, the entire way that they played was set up for James Harden, Mike D'Antoni, and also Russell Westbrook has thrived in this. But I mean, those are the main key guys. They've had this group of players for a while, and they've had a lot of disappointments. They can't lose in the first round. They can't lose to the first round to the guy that they just jettisoned away, thinking that they would be better off, and then lose to his team.
Is tonight the biggest game in Harden's career to this point? I mean, he's had big Game 7 games, so maybe not.
I mean, it's hard to say that because just generally the further you go, the more important the games are. But I would say it's definitely more important than random second round or even maybe third round games he's had in the past, because this is an elimination game. This is really important for his legacy. This is where...
But if you're out in the first round this year with no real excuses, this could be a big divergence for the Houston as a franchise. I don't know. We'll see.
Or they may just run it back again because everyone's under contract and it did work pretty well for the most part, and maybe try to give it a full season at it. But it's not a good look if they lose in the first round. And I think if they do, everything is on the table. They may not do anything, but I think literally everything is potentially on the table.
I know he's a little older, but I think people are downplaying the fact that they are going up against a top 10 point guard all time. Yeah. And he's showing us this series why he was considered the best in the league for so many years.
Right, he's great.
Yeah, phenomenal.
He's great. I'm willing to bet that if they lose, it's not going to be because Chris Paul had a bad game. Let's see how Shea does in his first Game 7 ever. Does Dennis Schroeder have a good game? How does Luke Dort do?
He
Shout
did
out
poor last game.
He hit some big threes,
Yeah.
but they're going to leave him open. As Chris Webber says, you're open for a reason,
Yeah.
but you got to make it.
We'll see. Big game tonight. I'm excited. We'll see what happens. We'll
it's
talk
going to
about
be an
Game 7
exciting
next.
game. Real quick on it, do you expect shootout or another grind it, low-scoring game?
I'm going to go low-scoring game.
Me too. Expect a very brickish first quarter.
I think so. I think, honestly, now that I think about it, like, because it's Game 7, defense turns up, you could see some historically
Also,
bad shooting performances tonight.
Defense turns up, and also one thing to look out for is we all know that James likes to get to the line. That's one of his main things.
Yeah.
Whistles in the pockets tonight.
You think so?
More so. They
Okay.
always play. They're not. You're not getting the same calls in a Game 7 you are in a Game 1.
Yeah.
Just straight up. Like, James, don't expect...
Bailout calls.
Yeah, don't expect when you do a step back and fall down like you always do that you're going to get that call. For example, don't expect that when you drive and maybe get tapped on the arm
Yeah.
that you're going to get that
Don't
call.
just flail and throw the ball up.
Yeah.
Like, you better try and make that basket because you may not get bailed out with that free throw call.
You wanted to finish quickly on a bookend on the Lakers-Portland.
Yeah,
series.
man. You can't talk basketball without talking LeBron and the Lakers. Portland, man. I was just so wrong about the series in every way. I don't know what to say. I feel like I should never make a prediction again. They were playing so great going into the playoffs. Damian was on fire. Obviously, Lillard left before Game 5. It didn't really matter at that point. He was injured. I'm looking at the injury report here. Damian Lillard, knee issues from carrying the Blazers for the last 5 years.
Oh, yeah, that's starting to wear on him.
If you had parlayed all my predictions about this series in some sort of an anti-Andrew bet, you'd be loaded.
Well, yeah, but I also went against you on our predictions. I told you were wrong, and I've been proven right. On
Oh,
that.
so disappointing. I don't know. I was wrong. I drank the Kool-Aid, man. It happens.
Yeah, look, it's a good series. Once Dame went down, you knew it was over, but they still had no one to guard LeBron, and they still have no one next year. They're going to have to try to figure this out. Find someone who can guard an elite wing. They still don't have that. They have the guards, and they have good scoring center. They're going to lose Hassan Whiteside, but going forward, who's their 3? Who's their 3-4? Guys like a big forward who can kind of guard some of these elite scoring wings, because there's a lot of them in their conference. Just literally Paul George, Kawhi, LeBron, Anthony Davis, Luka Doncic. Just right off the top of my head.
Remember when I said LeBron was looking bad going into the playoffs and I had my worries?
Yeah.
This is now a public service announcement to never doubt the king. 29-point triple-double on 60% shooting. That's what he averaged for the series.
They had no one to guard him.
Anthony Davis, 30-9 on 57% shooting. It's a good thing they were good because the rest of the Lakers are completely useless.
Well, that's how their team is set up. Do you want to talk about Clips Mavs real quick?
Real quick, man, I don't know what more Luka could have done. For his age, he set every playoff record you could have as a 20-year-old.
Yeah, not much to be said. The better team won. Once Porzingis went down, it's kind of funny, actually, how Luka gets the hurt ankle, keeps playing, and then Porzingis is the one that has an actual bad injury with the torn meniscus. They're going to have to watch out for him. Hopefully he stays healthy going forward. He might have to change the way he plays a little bit. Maybe stop doing all those crazy rim runs that he likes to do. They're in good hands. Luka is, when this current generation of star players retires, you have LeBron's vintage, which is pretty much all moved out except for LeBron, and then there's Melo and Paul still sticking around. Paul's a little younger, obviously, but same group. Then you have your Kevin Durant vintage, but the next group in, Luka, Giannis, those guys, they got next.
Yeah,
and
for
Luka's
sure.
part of that.
NBA future is bright.
Yeah. In the meantime, hopefully the Raps can pull out some wins.
Oh my God, please, you gotta turn it around. I can't watch another game like that. Even if you lose, just lose prettier.
I don't think you can lose pretty.
I mean, it's just been so ugly.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Anyway, thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, man.